National Baseball Hall of Fame. And another bill today on the creation of a business travel card to allow quicker processing of those traveling frequently between the U.S. and Asia-Pacific countries. Now live to the House floor here on C-SPAN.
The House will be in order. The prayer will be led today by our guest chaplain, Reverend Morris Mathis, Christ United Methodist Church in Sugar Land, Texas.
May we pray. Almighty God, who is the giver of every good and perfect gift, and who has blessed us with this good land and fashioned us into one united people, grant wisdom to those whom in your name we entrust the authority of government. Guide them, O God, in their deliberations and in their decision-making. Grant them the grace to see themselves as leaders who stand in the shadow of history. Bless them with the humility and insight of Abraham Lincoln, who said, "I have been driven many times to my knees with the overwhelming conviction that I had nowhere else to go." Give them the assurance that when the hour is desperate and the way unclear, there is one to whom they can go, and then, O God, in your mercy, help them to go there. In the name of the one who is the hope of the world. Amen.
The Chair has examined the journal of the last day's proceedings and announces to the House his approval thereof. Pursuant to Clause 1 of Rule 1, the journal stands approved. Pledge of Allegiance today will be led by the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Olson.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Without objection, the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Olson, is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, one of the privileges we have as members of Congress is to have the leader of a church from back home deliver the opening prayer at the United States House of Representatives. Today, I'm proud to introduce America to my home pastor, Morris Mathis. Morris has had a tremendous spiritual influence on my family and me. When we moved back to Texas, my wife and I worried about uprooting our 2 children from the only home they'd ever known. But we shouldn't have worried. We found Morris and the amazing people at Christ United Methodist Church in Sugar Land, Texas. They welcomed us with open arms and have loved us ever since. During his tenure at Christ United Methodist, Morris and his team, his wife, Jeppy Lynn, his son Kyle, and his daughter Amy, have made sure that every single man, every single woman, and every single child who walked through our church's doors felt the peace, the love, and the faith that embraced my family. Whatever I do in Congress, however long I'm here, I will have no fonder memory than my pastor, Morris Mathis, standing before the American people in prayer for our great nation. Yield back.
Gentleman's expired. The Chair will entertain up to 15 further requests for 1-minute speeches on each side of the aisle. The Chair recognizes the gentleman from Indiana. Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Speaker.
Later today, the House will consider H.R. 2447, a bill awarding the Congressional Medal to the Montford Point Marines, the first African Americans to serve in the United States Marine Corps. The United States of America owes these heroes a debt of honor that we will endeavor to pay in part today, and I rise in strong support of this measure. It was President Franklin Roosevelt who issued an executive order in June of 1941 that opened the doors for African Americans to enlist in the United States Marine Corps. Between 1942 and 1949, approximately 20,000 African Americans earned the Eagle, Globe, and Anchor at Camp Montford Point in Jacksonville, North Carolina, and we'll honor them today. I especially want to commend the Montford Point Marine Indianapolis chapter's surviving members, and since there are no former Marines, allow me to commend Marine Everett Corley, Johnny Washington, and Lancaster Price, along with the late Walter Etzel and Everett Sweat, who have done yeoman's work in keeping the proud memory of the Montford Point Marines alive in the Hoosier State. The Congressional Gold Medal is a fitting tribute to the Montford Point Marines. It marks the service and sacrifice of these trailblazing heroes, but it also marks our nation's march toward a more perfect union, and I heartily endorse it.
Gentleman, time has expired. The gentleman from New York, without objection.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to express my strong opposition to cuts in the Home Energy Assistance Program, or HEAP, as it is known in New York. With snow in Buffalo forecast this week, it seems unconscionable to slash this essential aid that helps seniors afford their heating bills. However, the House Labor HHS bill would do just that. It cuts HEAP and changes the formula in the way that penalizes New York and other cold weather states. New York's allocation would be cut by $179 million, or 34% from its current levels. As a result, HEAP assistance will be smaller, later, and benefit fewer New Yorkers. At a time when Western New York heating oil prices are expected to increase, these cuts would force seniors and families to choose between heating their homes, putting food on the table, or purchasing prescription drugs. I urge Congress to reject these cuts, which threaten to leave many of the 235,000 HEAP recipients in Erie and Chautauqua County out in the cold. I yield back the balance of my time.
Time's expired. The gentleman from Illinois, without objection.
Rest the House for 1 minute. Mr. Speaker, yesterday we learned that by the end of this year, another ratings agency may downgrade our nation's sovereign debt. Why? Because they don't believe that there's a plan to return our nation to fiscal health. Well, they're not entirely right. In July, we passed the cut, cap, and balance. It was a common-sense solution that would have maintained our nation's strong credit rating. The bill went to the cul-de-sac called the Senate, where, as so many things, it died. Maybe that's not surprising. Cut, cap, and balance would not only have cut spending, it would have changed the way Washington works. It would have made structural change. For a do-nothing Senate that has not bothered to pass a budget in over 900 days, the idea of spending cuts and fiscal accountability must be utterly foreign. Once again, we see the high cost of their inaction. I yield back.
Gentleman's time's expired. The gentleman from Virginia. Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, 54 years ago this month, Sputnik knocked the United States into second place in the space race. America responded with a tremendous investment in the sciences, which produced the Apollo program, the personal computer, the Internet, GPS, and numerous other technologies. But sadly, that may be ending. Last December, in an OECD ranking, the United States rated only average in education. Other nations are out-investing and out-educating us. And the Republican slash and burn agenda is making it worse. America is now losing education jobs every month and disinvesting in R&D and critical infrastructure. The President laid out a plan to invest in our educators, innovators, and job creators, priorities that used to have bipartisan support. We cannot continue to let American performance slide. We are jeopardizing our future. Mr. Speaker, last century, America fell behind, and the Soviet Sputnik was the result. It took a decade to catch up. How long will we fall behind today before we realize those investments are critical and support the President's job program? I yield back.
Gentleman from Ohio. Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, it's time for the President to get a grip on reality. He obviously doesn't understand the unemployment crisis that's crippling America. The President says that he hasn't seen the House Republican Jobs Plan. Well, here it is. It's been out since May, and it's available at jobs.gop.gov. Now, maybe the White House is having an Internet problem. I'm proud to join Natural Resources Committee Chairman Doc Hastings in recommending plans to the Super Committee that create jobs right here in America while at the same time reducing the deficit. Ideas like increasing onshore and offshore energy production. Increasing offshore energy production will create over 1 million new jobs alone and would generate billions in new federal revenue. While President Obama would rather make bad debts on green companies like Solyndra, wasting hard-earned taxpayer dollars. House Republicans have passed jobs bill after jobs bill. They're stacked up like cordwood on the Senate floor. But Senator Reid and President Obama refuse to consider them. The American people deserve better. President Obama's ideological job-killing policies are hurting America.
The gentlelady from California. Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today because I'm concerned about education. The most powerful tool we have to build our economy, I think, is being ignored. Yesterday was my granddaughter Brooklyn's 7th birthday. A few months ago, Brooklyn's parents asked her if she could have her birthday anywhere she wanted to, where would it be? And to her parents' surprise, she said she wanted to celebrate right here in the Capitol. So last night, we celebrated Brooklyn's birthday right here in the Capitol building. I like to think she chose the Capitol because it represents the opportunity each of us have to make people's lives better. Unfortunately, we're failing to uphold the obligation we have to Brooklyn and millions of American children. Senate Republicans have blocked just a vote on the President's American Jobs Act. It would have provided $60 billion to save the jobs of teachers, put Americans to work rebuilding schools, help community colleges. Nearly 300,000 teachers have already lost their jobs since 2008. Another 280,000 more may be out of the classroom if we don't do something now. Now is not the time to be laying off teachers. It's not the time to surrender the leadership in math and science to other countries. Mr. Speaker, Americans can't wait. We should put people to work rebuilding our crumbling schools. We should be working to transform the prestige of teachers in our culture so that this high-paid profession can be for the best and the brightest.
Time of the
Brooklyn
gentlelady
deserves it,
has
and
expired.
all American children
The
deserve
gentleman
it.
from Michigan. Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, last week, instead of making campaign bus stops and touting more stimulus spending, President Obama may have been better served coming to Rhinelander, Wisconsin, for a conference on jobs in the timber industry. At the conference, Representative Kravach, Duffy, Ribble, and myself, along with Chief Tidwell of the U.S. Forest Service, met with loggers, mill operators, and forestry experts, and the consensus was clear. Bureaucratic roadblocks and lack of direction are preventing the responsible harvest of federal timberlands and killing jobs. Mr. Speaker, this is not about clear-cutting our nation's forests. Responsible timber harvests make for healthier forests. They also create real jobs and grow the economy. As it stands, timber in the forests of the Great Lakes and across America is literally rotting on the stump, and the federal government's bureaucratic snares are allowing it to happen. This cannot continue. It is time President Obama and Congress recognize that the simplest and quickest way to create jobs is to release the handcuffs of overregulation and red tape.
Expired. The gentlelady from California. Without objection.
Did you know that small businesses create 2 out of every 3 new jobs? That's why we need a plan to invest in them, and that's why I support the President's American Jobs Act. It includes tax cuts for every small business. Businesses that hire workers who've been unemployed for 6 months or more gets $4,000 off their tax bill. Those that invest in machinery or equipment get to write off the whole expense. And the payroll tax cuts will save a small business with 50 workers approximately $50,000 a year, putting money in the bank for every mom and pop shop. The American Jobs Act will help small businesses do what they do best: create good jobs, drive innovation, and strengthen the middle class. For small businesses, the economy, and Americans everywhere, let's pass the American Jobs Act now.
Time of the gentlelady's expired. Gentleman from Mississippi.
Unanimous consent to address the House
Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, tonight back home in South Mississippi, the Coast Chamber is hosting the 33rd Annual Salute to the Military. I deeply regret not being able to attend tonight to recognize our nation's finest. As a member of the House Armed Services Committee, a Marine veteran, and the only member of Congress who still actively serves as a non-commissioned officer in the Mississippi Army National Guard, I know firsthand how vital their work is to our nation's defense. As I serve, I am always mindful of their service and sacrifice, as well as their families. Nowhere are so few asked to sacrifice so much for so many. So I ask this Congress and the American people to share in their sacrifice and say no to any more defense spending cuts. To date, more than half of the cuts in spending have come from defense. It is morally irresponsible to continue trying to balance the budget on the backs of our men and women in uniform. As a nation, our economic and net personal security depends on a strong, capable, well-equipped, and well-trained military. So I want to salute all those who have served and are currently serving. Thank you for making America safe and exceptional. I yield back.
Gentleman's time has expired. The gentleman from Illinois.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to give a voice to the voiceless victims of domestic violence. I want to tell the story of one woman from my state of Illinois who endured years of abuse and called our state's domestic violence helpline for help. In her call, the woman explained that over the years, she had suffered black eyes, broken and knocked out teeth, and broken bones. She said she couldn't take it anymore, but she couldn't leave because she feared her abuser would find her and kill her. She was suicidal and said she just needed to end it with the pills she had been collecting. Luckily, this woman reached out for help. 911 was called, and the helpline staff stayed online with her until the paramedics arrived. Sadly, most women never report their abuse. Even those who do find the strength to report, many are denied services, such as shelter, due to scarce resources. I speak today for those who cannot speak for themselves to say, we can end domestic violence. All we need is the will to do so. Thank you, and I yield back.
Gentleman's expired. The gentleman from Florida. Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As we approach the end of Breast Cancer Awareness Month, I want to address an often overlooked but important part of breast cancer awareness. 1% of all cancer patients are men. In 2010, almost 1,970 new male breast cancer cases were reported. Although the current survival rate for women is diagnosed with breast cancer is about 87%, the rate for men drops to 79%. The discrepancy is because many men don't think breast cancer can affect them. As such, they are often diagnosed after the cancer has developed in more advanced stages. One of my constituents in Florida's 5th District, Herb Wagner, is a 6-year male breast cancer survivor. After his diagnosis in 2005, Herb and his family founded A Man's Pink. The goal of A Man's Pink is to bring awareness to male breast cancer. Early detection is crucial in fighting any type of cancer, and men need to be reminded that breast cancer does not just affect women. For more information on male breast cancer, I encourage folks to learn about A Man's Pink. In the meantime, anybody with concerns should contact their doctor. With that, I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman's time has expired. The gentleman from California. Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, it's been 294 days since the Republicans took control of the House. The party of no still refuses to put forward a clear jobs plan. They have put politics ahead of what is right for the American people. Unemployment is near 17% in my district and one of the highest rates of foreclosure in the country. The American people in my district are hurting and throughout the country. Yet, instead of acting on a bold plan to create new jobs, Republicans have decided to protect tax cuts for millionaires and companies that ship jobs overseas. Now the Republicans in the Senate have said no to the Americans Job Act. They even thought it includes the same proposals that I've supported in the past. And the Republican leaders in the Senate just called the proposal to help teachers, firefighters, police officers stay on their jobs a, quote, bailout. These public servants educate, and I state, educate our children and keep our streets safe. They deserve our support. They don't need to deserve more gridlock in Congress. We can't wait. Let's pass the American Job Act now.
Time of the gentleman's expired. The gentleman from Texas. Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, as part of the House Republicans' plan for America's job creators, we are working hard every day to fix the Obama economy. Last week, the Senate stopped a bipartisan bill to permanently repeal the job-killing 3% withholding requirement for federal payments to government contractors. This week, however, the House plans to eliminate this requirement, representing House Republicans' continuing commitment to remove barriers to job creation and eliminate excessive burdens on small businesses. These Main Street businesses are the backbones of our economy and American job creation. As a former job creator, I know firsthand about the negative impacts of burdensome taxes and overreaching regulations. Although this withholding requirement is not scheduled to go in effect for another 15 months, it is already causing uncertainty for small businesses' operations and hiring plans. For these reasons, Congress must act now. Permanently repealing this unreasonable withholding provision is another real-world, Main Street solution to provide more certainty for small businesses to grow and to create jobs again. I urge my colleagues on both sides of the aisle to support H.R. 674.
Time of the gentleman has expired. Gentleman from Rhode Island.
I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1
Without
minute.
objection.
Mr. Speaker, my home state of Rhode Island, like the rest of the country, is facing a jobs crisis. The President put forth a comprehensive jobs bill which puts teachers, first responders, and construction workers to work and puts money in the pockets of American workers and employers so businesses will grow and add jobs. It also creates jobs by investing in America's schools. On a recent visit to the Henry J. Winters Elementary School in Pawtucket, I saw firsthand what this jobs bill could do. I saw a leaking roof, broken windows in kindergarten classrooms, exposed wires. These are the kinds of repairs that we could make if we passed the Fix America's Schools Today Act, which I'm co-sponsoring. This act, like the President's jobs bill, will provide critical funding for vital repairs and renovations to Winters Elementary Schools and schools all across Rhode Island and our country. Under the FAST Act, Rhode Island stands to receive more than $98 million to invest in modernizing existing K-12 public school buildings and facilities at community colleges, putting more than 1,000 Rhode Islanders back to work now. The Jobs Act would create jobs now. It would put money into the pockets of working Americans now. It would give businesses job-creating tax breaks now, and it would provide a boost to the economy now. That's why we need to take action now.
Gentleman from California. Without objection, so ordered.
Mr. Speaker, as I listen to my colleagues on both sides of the aisle talk about the imperative of job creation and economic growth, I'd like to recognize a job well done. 44 years, 7 months, and 5 days is a long period of time, but that's the tenure of public service provided by our friend, the now Chief Journal Clerk, Trish Madsen. She has worked for the Voice of America, the Departments of Agriculture and Transportation. She worked in the Minority Council Office under our former Minority Leader, Bob Michael. She is someone I got to know because her late mother was one of my constituents. And I'd like to ask all of our colleagues to join in giving a round of applause and ovation to Trish Madsen, who after 44 years, 7 months, and 5 days will be retiring today. Trish. And Mr. Speaker, I think we've consumed the entire 1 minute just applauding Trish, as it should be.
From Pennsylvania. Without objection.
Speaker, America was founded on the principle that everyone should get a shot at the American dream. But with so much unemployment, so many mortgages underwater, so many people struggling just to get by, it's not surprising that half of all Americans think the American dream is dead. This Congress should be making job creation our top priority. But what has the majority in the House done to create jobs? Nothing. What's even worse, every job proposal that President Obama has sent to this House has been met with a resounding no. And what's their alternative? To do nothing. Democrats have been working to pass legislation to grow this economy and create new jobs. After 42 weeks of doing nothing, it's time for the Republican majority to join us in giving the American people the jobs they need and deserve. I yield back.
Gentleman's time's expired. The gentleman from, a gentlelady from North Carolina.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Permission to address the House for 1 minute.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Our colleagues on the other side of the aisle are welcome to their own opinions, but not welcome to create the facts. When the Democrats took over the Congress 4 years ago, almost 5 years ago now, unemployment rate was 4.5%. It's been over 9% since they were in control, went to over 9%. The reason the President's so-called jobs bill has not been passed in this House is because the Democrats did not support it. It was introduced by request. What Republicans have done, though, is focus on the task of creating jobs since day one of this session, and I'm glad that President Obama is talking about it, too. We will work with the President when he comes up with ideas that work, but so far his proposals have not worked. Notice the stimulus bill that he asked us to pass. It would not raise unemployment above 8%. He wants to raise taxes on job creators, and all it will do is destroy private sector jobs. With that, I yield back.
Gentlelady's time's expired. The gentlelady from New York. Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, I would like to propose a plan that is as simple as 1, 2, 3. Number 1 is getting back to basics and helping to create badly needed jobs. This economy will not grow unless we stimulate private sector job growth. It's time to drop the partisan bickering and focus on creating jobs and creating them now, pass the President's jobs bill. Number 2 is building up our infrastructure. Work on our roads and trains is desperately needed to help America compete. And this badly needed repair work creates jobs that cannot be outsourced. We need to pass the transportation bill now. Number 3 is embracing a bold and balanced vision and crafting a true bipartisan agreement in the supercommittee, one that cuts our deficits by trillions, invests and raises revenues, and creates jobs. No one is pretending it will be easy, but if we get back to basics, it could be as easy as 1, 2, 3.
The gentleman from Texas.
Permission to address the House for 1 minute.
Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, last week I met with over a dozen community bankers in my congressional district. They are concerned for, quote, the tsunami of regulations coming out of Washington, D.C. Now, these are not Wall Street bankers. These are small-town bankers. They told me, quote, Washington regulators have their feet on the throats of small community banks who did not cause this economic downturn. The real-life consequences of Dodd-Frank on our community banks impact our local small businesses, our community's job creators. The reason is simple. Paying more money to comply with complicated, costly, meaningless regulations means fewer loans out the door for small businesses. Higher costs for compliance is why Main Street Bank in Kingwood, Texas will close 3 branches this week. It simply costs too much money to stay in the community banking business these days. When community banks close, there are fewer opportunities for small business owners to access capital. I often hear small business owners say they can't get loans. This is why. These are the real consequences of burdensome, costly, ineffective federal regulations, and that's just the way it is.
Gentleman's time has expired. The gentlelady from Texas. Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today because it has been nearly 11 months
that this Republican-led House of Representatives has pursued no jobs agenda, simply complain about the protections that the American citizens receive. The American Jobs Act will put teachers, firefighters, police officers, and construction workers back on the job. It will create job opportunities for returning American veterans. It will cut taxes and create financial growth incentives for American businesses, as well as provide much-needed job training and hiring programs for the Americans that are currently looking for work. Many provisions of the American Jobs Act have been strongly supported by Republicans in the past, but now suddenly they are against these ideas because they are being proposed by a Democratic president. This is the opposite of negotiation and compromise, and the American people do not have the patience for these antics instead of action. I urge both parties of this House to work together and pass the American Jobs Act for the American people. Thank you. I yield back.
Gentlelady's time has expired. Gentleman from Kansas.
Mr. Speaker, request permission to address the House.
Without objection.
Extend my remarks. Mr. Speaker, I rise today again in support of small business owners and builders all across the United States who will be harmed by a new tax withholding requirement by the federal government. With unemployment at 9.1% and holding, we desperately need to come together to do all that we can to get our economy growing. But our economic recovery will not come from government growth. It will come from entrepreneurs, innovators, and small business owners who take risk, expand, hire new workers, and create economic growth the old-fashioned way, in the private sector through hard work and free enterprise. The imposition of a 3% withholding tax increases the cost of doing business for our small business owners and therefore hurts job growth and the economic recovery. We cannot create jobs while punishing job creators. I urge my colleagues to support H.R. 674, legislation that will remove this burdensome new tax requirement on our small businesses. Mr. Speaker, we must come together as a Congress and do all that we can to promote legislation like this that will remove barriers to economic growth and get America back to work again. I yield back.
Time of the gentleman has expired. The gentleman from Tennessee. Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just this past week, the country of Turkey, an ally of ours, experienced a devastating earthquake. Nearly 400 people, they believe, have died, and great damage to the countryside. We've seen these disasters now in Japan and South America and other places. We've seen them in our country, too. We had problems last year. Who comes to the aid of the people in Turkey who we look out for as well and are concerned about? First responders, policemen, and fire people. My city of Memphis, Tennessee lies on the New Madrid Fault, most likely place in our country to have a major earthquake. When that event occurs, I want to have adequate policemen and firemen there to help our citizens. We can have them with the Jobs Act, have them this year when we don't know whether it will occur or not. First responders are so important to the future of America, and passing the Jobs Act will guarantee that we'll have security when a natural disaster occurs. We need to keep policemen and firemen employed. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Time of the gentleman has expired. The gentlelady from Washington.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I request 1 minute and opportunity to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to inform my colleagues that October is Down Syndrome Awareness Month. There are over 400,000 Americans who are living with an extra 21st chromosome, and my life has been blessed by one of them, our son Cole. As co-chair of the Congressional Down Syndrome Caucus, every day is a chance to raise awareness about this condition, advocating for Cole and those other 400,000 Americans, helping them to live the American dream. Today, the Bipartisan Down Syndrome Caucus is hosting a special briefing on Capitol Hill. We're bringing in over half a dozen experts on how we can work together to improve medical research, break down barriers, and expand opportunities for those who have Down syndrome and many others who could be positively impacted. I'd also like to take this opportunity to say thank you to the countless individuals in the disabilities community who have reached out to me and my family. I'm forever grateful for your work to make America a better place for my family and all Americans. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I yield back.
Gentlelady's time has expired. The gentleman from Connecticut. Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, several weeks ago, a railroad bridge over the Norwalk River in my district seized, causing delay and economic damage along the New York-Boston corridor, an artery for jobs, for economic prosperity, for growth. Turns out that this is true around the country. The American Society of Engineers grade our infrastructure a D. Make no mistake, we're going to fix this, because the American people are not going to tolerate bridges that fall down, roads that crumble. Meanwhile, thousands of engineers, electricians, and carpenters are out of work. You see the connection? Out of work construction people and a desperate need to rebuild our infrastructure. All that is missing is for the Republican majority to pass a jobs bill which funds the investment in our infrastructure that will lead to economic prosperity and to jobs now. Every day that goes by in this chamber without an infrastructure bill is a vote against safety and against jobs for people who desperately need them. And with that, I yield back my time.
Gentleman's time has expired. The gentlelady from Hawaii. Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, mabuhay. We take this time this month to recognize the contributions of Filipino Americans to the growth of our nation. The first wave of migrants came from the Philippines to Hawaii when we were still a territory. Today, they number the largest ethnic group in the state, and they total almost 1.5 million in the state of California. Now, Mr. Speaker, we have not kept our promises to the Filipino Americans. In World War II, we drafted about 200,000 of them with the promise that they will have citizenship and benefits. And in 1946, the Congress rescinded that promise. Today, with the stimulus package in 2009, we finally authorized the payment of some of the benefits to 30,000 who are remaining, 30,000. But we have still failed to do what they wanted the most, which is the reunification of their families. These stories and others we will hear through this month. And Mr. Speaker, please join with me in saying to them, Salamat po, thank you for what you've done to this nation, for this nation. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Time of the gentlelady has expired. The gentleman from New Jersey. Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, our national unemployment rate is 9.1%. Yet for 42 weeks, the Republican leadership has ignored the need for a strong jobs agenda to reduce the workplace protections, and they've gone to weaken our economy. Unfortunately, the only jobs that will result from the Republican agenda are those vacated by victims of workplace injuries and possible deaths due to watered-down regulations. This is not responsible and only hampers our economic growth. Democrats acknowledge that small businesses are responsible for nearly 70% of job creation. As a result, we have proposed the Americans Job Act and the Make It in America Act to support small businesses, create jobs, and strengthen our economy. The American Jobs proposal would create nearly 300,000 education jobs, keeping thousands of police and firemen on the job, cut the payroll tax in half, put more money in the pocket of Americans immediately without adding a dime to the deficit. The Make It in America proposal would close tax loopholes that encourage outsourcing of U.S. jobs overseas, establish incentives for creating American clean energy jobs. I ask my colleagues to abandon their misguided agenda and support those measures that will strengthen our country for all.
The gentleman has expired. The gentleman from Ohio. Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last year, we passed a bill in this House with 350 votes, 99 Republicans, to address the issue of currency manipulation around the world, primarily China. And unfair trade practices in China have cost America 2.8 million jobs in the last 10 years, 1.9 million of those manufacturing. If we have the strength in this body, in the House of Representatives, to take on the Chinese, we can have a major job package right here in the United States and put small and medium-sized manufacturers on a level playing field, put average workers back to work, reclaim the mantle of manufacturing in the United States. But this House has denied us the opportunity to take on the Chinese. The Senate passed it with over 60 votes just a week or two ago. Last year, we passed it in this House, 350 votes, 99 Republicans. We cannot be appeasers to the Chinese. We need to take them on and drive that investment back in the United States and reclaim the mantle of manufacturing around the world.
Time of the gentleman's expired. The chair lays before the House of Communication.
The Honorable the Speaker, House of Representatives. Sir, Today I hereby resign my position with the House Committee on Natural Resources. It has been an honor to serve as a member of the Committee on Natural Resources, and I have been proud to work with my colleagues to find solutions to our nation's energy crisis. I look forward to continuing to represent the people of the 3rd Congressional District of Tennessee. I appreciate the opportunity to have served on the House Committee on Natural Resources, and I look forward to working with all of you in the future. Signed sincerely, Chuck Fleischman, Member of Congress.
Without objection, the resignation is accepted. The Chair lays before the House a message from the President.
To the Congress of the United States, Section 202D of the National Emergencies Act provides for the automatic termination of a national emergency unless, prior to the anniversary date of its declaration, the President publishes in the Federal Register and transmits to the Congress a notice stating that the emergency is to continue in effect beyond the anniversary date. In accordance with this provision, I have sent to the Federal Register for publication the enclosed notice stating that the national emergency with respect to the situation in or in relation to the Democratic Republic of the Congo and the related measures blocking the property of certain persons contributing to the conflict in that country are to continue in effect beyond October 27, 2011. The situation in or in relation to the Democratic Republic of the Congo, which has been marked by widespread violence and atrocities that continue to threaten regional stability, continues to pose an unusual and extraordinary threat to the foreign policy of the United States. For this reason, I have determined that it is necessary to continue the national emergency to deal with that threat and the related measures blocking the property of certain persons contributing to the conflict in that country. Signed, Barack Obama, the White House.
Referred to the Committee on Foreign Affairs and ordered printed. Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, the Chair will postpone further proceedings today on motions to suspend the rules in which a recorded vote of the yeas and nays are ordered or on which the vote incurs objection under Clause 6 of Rule 20. Recorded votes on postponed questions will be taken later. For what purposes, gentlemen from North Carolina seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I move to suspend the rules and pass the bill H.R. 2447.
Clerk will report the title of the bill.
H.R. 2447, a bill to grant the Congressional Gold Medal to the Montford Point Marines.
Pursuant to the rule, the gentleman from North Carolina, Mr. Jones, the gentleman from Missouri, Mr. Clay, each will control 20 minutes. The Chair recognizes the gentleman from North Carolina.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that all members may have 5 legislative days in which to revise and extend their remarks and to add extraneous material on this bill.
Without objection, so ordered.
Mr. Speaker, I yield myself such time as I may consent.
The gentleman is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, this is a very important legislation. I want to thank the gentlelady from Florida, Ms. Congresswoman Corinne Brown, for bringing this forward. And I want to, at this time, say that the chairman of the Financial Services Committee and the ranking member, Mr. Frank, they saw the importance of this legislation and wanted to bring it to the floor as quickly as possible. Mr. Backus, who's chairman of the committee, has a son, Warren, who is now in the United States Marine Corps. And, Mr. Speaker, with that, I would like to ask unanimous consent that I might submit remarks for the record by Mr. Backus and also legislation from David Camp, very supportive of Mrs. Brown's legislation.
Without objection, so ordered.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to make just a few comments and then I'll reserve the balance of my time. I have the privilege to serve Camp Lejeune Marine Base, which is in the 3rd District of North Carolina. And in 1994, as a candidate for this office, I heard about the very special Marines who trained at Montford Point, which is on the base at Camp Lejeune. I did not know the history at that time, but as we all know, during that period of time that we had segregation in this country, which was wrong. But President Franklin Roosevelt made a decision and issued a directive that the Marine Corps would accept these fine Americans who wanted to be Marines. So therefore, they were segregated, but they were Marines who gave their very best for our country.
And again, Montford Point is located at Camp Lejeune Marine Base, which is in my district. And at this time, Mr. Speaker, I'm going to reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman from North Carolina reserves the balance of his time. The gentleman from Missouri, Mr. Clay.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. At this time, I yield myself such time as I may consume.
Gentleman's recognized.
I urge my colleagues in the House of Representatives to pass this bill honoring the first black Marines. I am a proud co-sponsor, along with 305 of my colleagues, of H.R. 2447 to grant the Congressional Gold Medal to the Montford Point Marines. In 1941, President Roosevelt issued a presidential directive giving African Americans an opportunity to serve in the Marine Corps. These recruits from all states were not sent to Parris Island or San Diego. Instead, African American Marines were segregated. They received recruit training at Montford Point, a facility on board Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. Approximately 20,000 African American Marines received basic training at Montford Point. During World War II, 75% served overseas. The initial intent of the Corps was to discharge these Marines after the war and return them to civilian life. This would have left the Corps in all-white service. As World War II progressed, attitudes changed and reality took hold. Once given the chance to prove themselves, it became impossible to deny that these Marines were just as capable as any other Marine, regardless of race or color, creed, or national origin. According to General James F. Amos, the Commandant of the Marine Corps, and I quote, "Montford Point Marines served with distinction in 3 of the bloodiest battles in the Pacific, Saipan, Iwo Jima, and Okinawa. The Montford Point Marines fought with such tenacity, valor, and distinction that the Commandant at that time was moved to declare, the Negro Marines are no longer on trial. They are Marines, period." Their actions reflected the finest attributes of the leatherneck fighting spirit and blazed the trail for generations of African Americans in the Marine Corps. The special recognition that Congress has already afforded the first African American servicemen of the Navy, Army, and Air Force is long overdue. The Montford Point Marines. The distinguished record of these African Americans advanced the cause of civil rights and contributed to President Truman's decision to order the desegregation of the armed forces in 1948. Mr. Speaker, the Montford Point Marine service and sacrifice reflects great credit upon themselves and upholds the highest traditions of the Marine Corps. I urge all of my colleagues to honor the Montford Point Marines by voting for this bill, and I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman reserves his time. The gentleman from North Carolina.
Mr. Speaker, in addition to what Mr. Clay was saying, I want the House to know that the Montford Point Marines are revered by the citizens of Jacksonville and Camp Lejeune. Their history speaks for itself. They gave their blood, their life in the South Pacific with their fellow Marines as they fought for this country during World War II. And again, I think that Congresswoman Brown deserves so much credit in bringing this forward, and the memory of Franklin Delano Roosevelt for seeing the value of creating this opportunity for Americans. And with that, I reserve the balance of my time.
From Missouri.
Mr. Speaker, at this time, I'd like to yield 5 minutes to the distinguished gentlewoman from Florida and the original sponsor of this legislation, the gentlewoman from Florida, Ms. Brown.
Gentlelady from Florida is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As I begin my remarks, I would like to acknowledge that many of the Montford Point Marines are here visiting us today in the Capitol. This is a picture of the Montford Point Marines. Mr. Speaker, I rise today on this great day for the Montford Point Marines. Today, the House of Representatives will pass a resolution giving these Marines their long overdue recognition. I am pleased to join with so many of my colleagues, now 308, to support a resolution to grant the Montford Point Marines a Congressional Gold Medal, the highest civilian honor that can be restored for outstanding deeds of acts of service to the security, prosperity, and national interests of the United States. Since 1775, the United States Marine Corps has served our country in peace and war. Today, the Marine Corps will still serve the nation as a force of readiness, prepared to serve whenever the nation calls. It is befitting that we celebrate on November the 10th the 236th birthday of the Marine Corps, that we highlight the honor of the Montford Point Marines. On June 25, 1941, President Franklin Delano Roosevelt issued Executive Order number 8802, opened the doors for the very first African Americans to enlist in the United States Marine. From 1942 to 1949, 20,000 African Americans enlisted in the Marine Corps in a time of war when the military was resistant to integration. These African Americans from all states were not sent to the traditional boot camps in Parris Island, South Carolina, and San Diego, California. Instead, African American Marines were segregated, experienced basic training at Camp Montford Point near the New River in Jacksonville, North Carolina. Years before Jackie Robinson and decades before Rosa Parks and Martin Luther King Jr., these heroes joined the Marine to defend this country and do their jobs. One Pacific Marine is worth singling out. Gilbert Hashmont Johnson was one of the first African-American Marine drill instructors at Montford Point in 1943. He exemplified the work ethics and toughness that it took to be a Montford Point Marine. Born in rural Alabama, Johnson attended Stillman College in 1922, but enlisted in the Army after 1 year at school. After 6 years in the Army, he tried civilian life for 4 years, but enlisted in the Navy in 1933. When he heard about the Executive Order 8802, he immediately requested transfer from the Navy to the Marine. When this occurred, his nickname of Hashmont was secured, having more service stripes and ranking stripes. After serving as Sergeant Major at Montford Point, Hashmont went on to serve as Sergeant Major of the 52nd Defense Battalion in Ghana. While serving in Ghana with the battalion during the World War II, he found black Marines was being assigned to labor details rather than combat patrols, from which they was currently exempted. Once he got the commanding officer to reverse this decision, he personally led 25 separate excursions into the jungle. Hashmont went on to serve in Korea and eventually retired in 1959 with 32 years of service, 17 with the Marines. After his death in 1972, the Marine Corps paid tribute to this great warrior and leader by renaming the camp in his honor Camp Gilbert H. Johnson. In July of 1948, President Harry S. Truman issued Executive Order 9981 ending subjugation in the military, and in September of 1949, Montford Marine Camp was deactivated in its 7 years of subjugation. General James F. Amos, commander of the Marine Corps, has stated that it is the responsibility of the Marine Corps and this Congress to honor these men who suffered through racism and segregation here in this country. I am honored to offer this resolution to recognize their service and sacrifice and acknowledge today United States Marine Corps is an excellent opportunity for advancement for all races. May I have an additional minute?
Mr. Speaker, I yield an additional minute to the
lady is recognized for 1 minute.
Due to the service and example of these original Montford Point Marines, I ask unanimous consent to submit to the record the letter from General James F. Amos, the commander of the Marine Corps, in support of this resolution. I want to thank
Without
the many
objection, so ordered.
I want to thank the many members who helped to bring this resolution to the fore. The Financial Service Chairman, Spencer Bacchus, his son served in the Marine, was especially helpful. In addition, there is so many members, over 308 sponsors, the leadership on both parts. This is an example of what we can do when we work together. And I am just very excited about what we're doing here today. I want to end by, I'm not very good at this, but what is it? Hurrah! Hurrah! Honoring these men of Montford Point and putting in the record the letter from General Amos. Thank you very much. And this is, like I said, a great day and a wonderful bipartisan example of what we can do when we work together. Thank you.
Gentlelady's time has expired. The Chair will remind all persons in the gallery that they are here as guests of the House and that any manifestation of approval or disapproval of proceedings is in violation of the rules of the House. The gentleman from North Carolina.
Mr. Speaker, at this time I'd like to yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Arizona, New Mexico. Excuse me, I apologize.
From New Mexico is recognized.
Mr. Pierce from New Mexico
is recognized for 2 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to rise in support of H.R. 2447, introduced by the gentlelady from Florida, Corrine Brown, which would right a wrong of the segregation era by awarding congressional gold medals collectively to the so-called Montford Point Marines, our country's first black Marine unit. Earlier this month, the country honored the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. for his leadership in the civil rights movement. In their own way, these African-American men, 20,000 of whom trained in the segregated boot camp in North Carolina, fought for civil rights and equality even as they fought for peace and freedom in World War II. It was unfair for them to have to wage the first battle while waging the second to defend us all. While it is interesting that these brave men were not even the first black American Marines, at least a dozen served with honor fighting alongside white Marines during the Revolutionary War. One, John Martin, a slave, was reportedly recruited without the knowledge or permission of his slave owner. But after the war ended, both the Marines and the Navy were disbanded, and when the Marines were reformed in 1798, the right to fight for the country and the Marines was taken from the black Americans. Service by blacks was barred supposedly based on British naval tradition. Nearly 200,000 black Americans fought in the Union Army in the Civil War, and black soldiers served in the Army during the Spanish-American War and World War I. But the Navy at the time had a policy of not using blacks in combat roles, although plenty served in support roles. In recognition of the heroism of the men who took the boot camp at Montford Point, we should immediately pass this legislation. Marine Commandant General James F. Amos has worked tirelessly urging Congress to recognize the Montford Point Marines with a Congressional Gold Medal, as it did a half-decade ago in recognition similar trail-breaking World War II military service by the Tuskegee Airmen and the Nisei soldiers. Mr. Speaker, this bill has more than 300 co-sponsors, of which I am one. The staggering number represents a fitting recognition of the bill's importance, and I urge passage. I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman's time has expired. The gentleman from Missouri.
Mr. Speaker, I want to first thank my friend from New Mexico for his comments on the historic service of African Americans throughout our history, and at this time would like to yield 2 minutes to the distinguished gentleman from North Carolina.
The gentleman from North Carolina is recognized for 2 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, we have honored the Army's Buffalo Soldiers and the Air Force's Tuskegee Airmen. It's time to give the Montford Marines the honor that is their due. The Montford Point Marines fought an enemy abroad and injustice at home. They served with great valor and distinction and loved their country more than their country loved them at the time. President Roosevelt ordered in 1941 that the Marine Corps be open to African Americans, but the Marines considered themselves the most elite branch of our military and the most traditional, and many resented Roosevelt's order that African Americans be accepted. the first African-American Marines were hardly welcomed with open arms. Their segregated unit was stationed at Montford Point, North Carolina. They were near Camp Lejeune, but the Montford Point Marines could not enter Camp Lejeune except in the company of a white officer. They were passed over for years for promotions that white Marines achieved in weeks. When they trained with white Marines, which was rare, they waited until white Marines had eaten before they went through the chow lines. The Montford Point Marines were sent to the Pacific Theater to serve behind the lines, not in combat, for which they were presumed to be unsuited. No one told the Japanese. The Montford Point Marines served in Saipan, Iwo Jima, and Okinawa, three of the bloodiest battles in the Pacific. They came under intense fire and showed great courage, winning the praise of skeptical white officers. President Truman fully integrated the armed forces in 1948, and African-American Marines served side by side with white Marines in Korea and in every conflict since then. The distinguished service of the Montford Point Marines largely made that possible. General Amos, the Commandant of the Marines, said he wants every Marine, from private to general, to know the history of the Marines who fought an enemy overseas and racism and segregation in their own country. I want every Marine and every American to know that history. Semper Fi. I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman's time.